is Brandon Groce. And we are the Game Changers. Designers, creatives alike. We are in a world that runs on value. Our next designs will be the shiniest. Our next animation will be the most buttery. Ladies and gentlemen, Game Changers, let the games begin.
What is going on, Editor X Live? Welcome back to another session with me, your host, Brandon Groce. I am super excited to have day one of our first masterclass with Editor X to help you guys, the beginners, or those of you who are interested in building no-code or getting your toes wet into the no-code landscape, helping you guys build your first no-code website today. So with that said, I want to say hello to all of you guys in the chat. Let me know who you are, where you're coming in from, and really how you found this masterclass, whether it's from our Discord, ADP list, or some other community online. Don't feel afraid to say hello. This conversation and really just this live session is about building some really cool things, helping you guys get into Editor X for the first time and help you guys really just understand it from a fundamental standpoint. So with that said, let me actually go ahead and make sure that you guys are actually in the... I'm gonna make sure I have everything set up. Okay. I was running a little bit with some technical issues, guys, but it looks really, really good. All right, Fan Coach, what is going on, my friend? Glad to see you in the chat. Looks like everything is working perfectly. All right, with that said, let's go over to my screen, show you guys what we're building today, and basically start from ground zero. Diego, what's going on? Coming from ADP list, glad to have you. I'm super excited to have really some of the ADP list fam show you guys a little bit of what Editor X has to offer. And also, I just want to share with you guys really quick, if you are not familiar with Editor X at all, let me know also in the chat. If you guys are like brand spanking new, have you heard of this? Have you not? Because I'm sure if you guys have heard of Webflow, I've used Webflow, but Editor X, like, it feels very much like my design tool of choice, Adobe XD, or very much like Figma as well. But it's what I like about it is very much like designing a website, not building a website. So with that said, let's dive in. Denise says from ADP list. Shout out to ADP list. You guys are awesome. All right, so first off, if you check out editorx.com, you can start for free. You can build literally unlimited amount of websites really without for free. Basically, that's what's important. And, you know, it's until you want to maybe use your own domain or something that you actually have to pay. So if you guys want to jump in here for free and actually start messing around with it, it's free, do so. But let me show you guys what we're actually building today. So I'm going to refresh this and we're going to, from scratch, kind of show you how to build this very basic landscape of a website. People who care about your growth, we have a very simple button. We have a little bit of a paragraph here. We have a simple image to our right. And it is fully responsive. It goes down to tablet and it breaks down to mobile as well, really nicely. So that's what we're going to do. And we have also a very smooth little animation, one side coming in from the left, the other side coming in from the right. So let's get started. Now, what I do want to do is kind of introduce you guys to the editor first. I feel like one of the big pieces, we were doing a lot of this last week, and a huge feedback piece from you guys, especially from those of you from ADP list. You guys are like, Brandon, slow it down. Can you teach us a little bit about how Editor X works? What are the icons? What is just the landscape? What am I looking at? So we're going to start there, then we'll get into the rest of the tutorial. So what you guys are looking at for today for me is about 15 to 20 minutes of diving into how Editor X works from a fundamental standpoint, showing you guys around the actual application, and then the rest of the session. We're probably taking about a whole hour today, but we'll see how fast it goes. We're probably going to do like 30 minutes and then 30 minutes for, 30 minutes for showing you guys Editor X, 30 minutes for actually building the site. So we might get finished early and we might take the full hour depending on how many questions you guys have. So with that said, let's jump in and feel free to stop me at any moment if you guys have any questions. All right, so let's start from the beginning. So I'm just going to open a blank site and show you guys how this works. So when you guys sign up for Editor X, for example, if you guys, you go to start now, you sign up, all that stuff. When you open up Editor X for the first time, you'll see something very much like this. You'll have your dashboard, you'll have my sites, and basically it'll just be blank. So to create your first site, you'll just go to this button here, create new site. And another thing that I really like about Editor X is that we're not using Wix, we're using Editor X. I like the fact that, and you guys can't see the templates for whatever reason right now. It might be because I'm streaming in the bandwidth. But let me see if I can refresh this. Oh man. But what's important is that there's tons of actual, let me see, if I click on these, you'll be able to see. There's starter templates. For example, we're starting from scratch today, but there are templates that you can basically click and really go from, which I love about Editor X. But what we're gonna do today is start from scratch to show you guys really everything that you need to know. But if you were working on a project and you need to build something fast, there are tons of templates for really just any sort of scenario. There's portfolio, there's gaming, there's certain types of agency, professional, e-commerce website templates that you guys can just like click, go, and just edit within it. But we're not going to do that today. We're going to show you guys, we're going to start have a little bit more of a fundamental approach. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to go to the from scratch. Have no idea why this is not showing up, the images for them. Pretty sure it's because I'm live streaming right now. But I'm going to just let that load. And by the way, the project that we are working on today is inspired by Vladimir Gruev. So if you guys have seen this on the internet, just letting you know that this has been inspired by this amazing individual and is not any original work of mine. We're just building it today. Okay, so the first thing you'll see when you open a new project is you'll have a standard header bar, you'll have a section, and you'll have a footer. And let's kind of just break things down step by step. Okay, there's a lot of things within Editor X, but really the only things that you really need to pay attention to, especially for what we're building today, are just a few of these buttons. Everything else, you just don't look at them. You don't need them. So what's important are this button here, add elements. We'll talk about this in a second. Number 2 are your layers panel. This is, again, really familiar to us like as designers. And by the way, in the chat, how many of you guys are designers? How many of you are developers? Like, let me know what type of creative you are. That would be extremely helpful. And as you guys can see, I can hover over these, and they also hover over, or they also show which piece is correlating to these, whichever element I'm hovering over in here as well. So you can see we have our header. Inside of our header, we have our hamburger, which is hidden right now. We have a menu, which is over here. We have a vector art, which is basically our logo, and so on and so forth, our section and our footer. I'm going to close that for right now. So those are really the only 2 things that you really need to pay attention to over here. Everything else, there are pages, but we're not going to get into that today. If you guys want to dive into a little bit more intermediate and things like that, you guys can come to tomorrow's session. All right, the other side is our inspector. This is very much, if you guys are familiar with, you've used Sketch, you've used Adobe XD, you've used Figma. This is basically your designer's basically like your settings tab. So anything I've selected, for example, if I select my section here, it gives me the width of that, the height of it, the minimum width, the minimum height. We'll dive into what that is, and if you guys even need to pay attention to what that is. And max width, max height, and some other things that you really don't need to know about just yet. Like, for example, we have like overflow content. This is simply, for example, if we have a, if we get a container in here, right? Basically what overflow content means, and it having it on show, is basically saying, hey, this section, anything that goes outside of it that we have in it, show it. But if we want to actually hide, basically we're masking that area. So show and hide, it's pretty simple. You can basically think of it as almost a mask. Show is showing everything outside of it, and there's no mask, and hiding it is making that section have a mask. All right, cool. So we have, Diego says, coming from software quality assurance field. Oh, sweet. So definitely would love to hear some of your thoughts on this too, Diego, as we go through this. We got another Facebook user, designer. We have apologize if I don't get your name, my friend, but also a designer, Lakshitha. We have, hi, Brandon. Yo, what's going on? Elbow cough. What's going on, my friend? Glad to see you. And again, I apologize with the name. We'll call you Lak for right now. Glad to see you, my friend. All right. let's go back. And so basically what you need to know is the left side of our Editor X is basically how we add things to the site. The right side toolbar is how we edit those, both from a layout standpoint right here. This is a layout tab, and from a design standpoint, which is basically like colors, adding background, adding video or images to a background of a section, things like that. And now there is a third tab, which is basically in beta right now, which is animation or interactions, hovers and clicks, animations. But we won't be covering that today. We'll be covering a different type of animation. So let's start dragging some of this stuff out. Let's get, I basically gave everything to you like really dirty. If you guys have any questions on it, please let me know. But I want to start diving into pulling things out onto this website so you can start seeing in context how some of this stuff is used. We got Isaac in the chat. What's going on, my friend? We have also a UX designer. Glad to have you here. And also, guys, what would be extremely, I must change my name. You're good. Like, all right. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to start off very simple. So one thing I do want to explain to you guys is we can design very similarly how we're used to as designers. The only thing that we need to pay attention to and think about is with responsive web design is we need to make sure that Editor X knows and understands how things respond. And we do that by creating containers, boxes, and using grids. So the only difference between something like Adobe XD or Figma and Editor X is that we have the responsive element. And the easiest way to make things responsive is just making things have constraints. So the first thing that we are going to actually build is this left side here. And if you guys want to also follow along, you guys have two options. If you guys want to just listen and learn, cool. But if you guys also want to try your hand at what we're building today, if you guys are on YouTube and you go in the link down in the description, I did give you guys the style or the asset library for this. So if you guys want to build along or rewatch this and try to build this in Editor X yourself, you totally can. And also, if you do have any more questions, we do have a link to our Discord. So if you have questions after this and you are trying something, feel free to join that. And we have a Ask a Question section and a little bit more on that later. Okay, so let's dive in. So I'm going to go to my plus here. I'm going to go to my add elements. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is just show you guys the different things. If you guys have used other WYSIWYG platforms before, you guys have seen or are familiar with, if I want to add text, I can simply click it or literally drag it out onto my canvas here. Same thing with a paragraph, same thing with a button. It's pretty straightforward, guys. I can pull out a gallery, a container, and I can go in and edit it. But what I'm going to go ahead and do for right now is, first off, I don't want this header here. We're going to make our own. And so to start, and I'm going to click on our main section here. I want to make sure that this is set to 100% viewport height, which is basically saying, hey, Editor X, whatever device you're showing on, please show 100% of that height of whatever device, desktop, tablet, mobile that you're being viewed on. Please just, for this section, make it 100% of that height. So I'm going to select my section, go over to my inspector, and I swear that's the only nerdy thing for this that we'll have to dive into. Like, I don't like numbers, guys. This is why I use Editor X. So a couple things I also want to show you and really explain. We have minimum height here. We don't need that. Again, like numbers in Editor X, you can use them if you desire, but I really try to keep things very simple in terms of percentages. Now, what I'm going to do here, the section has disappeared on us, but we're going to go, it's because it doesn't have a set height. I'm going to go to my height here and I'm going to type in 100 and VH. Okay. Now there's a couple things. I'm going to refresh this because sometimes the height gets a little wonked out. Or not wonked out, but sometimes when you're resizing things, especially with vertical height, it just needs a quick refresh because one, I took away the height, so when I try to bring the height back, Editor X gets a little confused. So now we have a 100% vertical height, And one of the cool things, let's say you don't want to do that, but there are other options in Editor X. I can set this to pixels, which is almost 800 pixels in height. I can set this to really just anything else. I can either do pixels, or just because I don't like numbers, I'm just like, hey, just fit the vertical height of whatever device on desktop this is being viewed on. So I just do viewport height just to avoid the numbers. Next, I'm going to start to get into our design stuff. I'm going to get our colors. So first off, I'm going to go back to our original design. I'm going to steal what color this is. So I'm going to select my section. I'm going to go to the design tab here. I'm going to click my color. I'm going to see what this is. We have, all right, I'm going to just copy this. This is 9493BF. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to bring that over to our design here. Go to my design tab. Go to my color, and what I'm going to do here is, there's a couple things I want to explain here as well. What you guys see here is you see themes and you see colors. I can add pretty much to my color swatches, or if you guys are familiar with, design systems, that's what these theme colors are. If we start, for example, if we set anything that we set black with this theme color, and I actually go in and edit to this theme color later, everything that I've used that theme color on will actually change to that color I've edited it to. So themes versus my colors are very different. Think as my colors as swatches, and think as themes as colors you can use basically in tandem to edit universally throughout your site. So I am going to do exactly that. First, I'm going to pick this pale pink-ish beige color. I'm going to go ahead and edit. I'm going to edit this color, and I'm going to make it our color we just copied, which is not that one. Let's grab the actual one. Here we go. F6F5EE. All right, I accidentally grabbed a gray. All right, let's paste that. Boom, hit apply. Okay, where did it go? Apply. Okay, perfect. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I need to split this website into two parts. Okay, if we go to the finished design, I'm gonna click on my section. If you guys see this line straight down the center of our section, we've basically taken our section and divided it into two. It's a lot easier that way, because once we start getting into responsive things, right? I basically am telling Editor X, hey, once we start getting down to tablet, please just make everything vertical and stack things, right? So once we start squeezing down here, it automatically stacks. And as you guys can see, that vertical line is now horizontal and has moved everything vertically. That's exactly what we're looking for. And same thing for mobile. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to click our section. We're going to apply a grid. And we have all of these options. We don't really need to go into them, but basically all you need to know is that you can pick a pre-selected or pre-created grid, or you can create your own by going to other. So I'm going to do a 2x1. And now I'm going to start creating all the content that we need on the left side. The right side is really easy. All I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. I'm going to do quick add. And I'm going to add a image here. And so I'm going to just pull this. Again, this is something that I'm just going to get this to the size that I want. Just dragging. I don't have to add any numbers. I'm just like, all right, I want it this size. Perfect. Thank you. And what I'm going to do here is I am actually going to, this is going to be a little bit of a cheat, but if you guys have downloaded the asset library that's in the description, you guys will be able to do this too. So if you guys have used the design library, where you access that is under assets. So I've clicked my plus here, add element. I'm going to go to assets. And that library that I give you guys in the description is called Masterclass 001. So I'm going to go there. And as you guys can see, these are all the assets that I've given you. I've given you the paragraph, I've given you the title, the right-hand side image, I've given you the button, the logo, and the different squiggles. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take this right image and I'm going to just pull this out here. Now, essentially, this is just an image. This is a PNG. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to exactly what I did with the image that I added. Rather than uploading an image again, I'm just going to use the asset that I've already put in, really just embedded into the assets. So I'm just going to scale this to what I want. Now, if you guys are seeing some of this getting cut off, we don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my cogwheel here. And the main thing that I want to do is reset image here. So what that's going to do is it's going to make my image reset to the actual scale or the aspect ratio I've uploaded it as. So just like in your design program, I'm going to, or your design programs, I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to scale my image out diagonally just like this. And I'm going to center this horizontally, and I'm going to make sure that this image is smack dab to the very far left of our grid cell. Now, I think this is a very good time to actually talk about what are grid cells, because vocabulary, guys, vocabulary, especially when you're getting started with new programs, very important. So when we created a grid, we made a grid cell to the left and a grid cell to the right. And if you notice, when I clicked my image and we go into our inspector panel, right? We open this and we're in our layout tab. If we look down here at the location in grid cell here, we have a left grid cell and a right grid cell. So if I push this over here, right, this image will move into the left grid. If I move this over here, it'll move into the right grid. So I want it in the right grid. And what I want to do here also, when it comes to docking, and to explain what docking is telling Editor X, hey, I want this image to hug, or basically when we are responsively pulling in, expanding or contracting the website, I want this asset or this element to hug or basically stay sticky to this part of the website. So for example, right now it is docked to the left, which means if I move this image off just a little bit, just moving it, you see this line, okay? And what that means is basically as this website shifts, Editor X will try to keep this image docked 142 pixels away from the center, or basically away from the left side of the right grid cell. I can zero that out. I can add any amount of pixels. I can say 56. I can change 56 to a percentage. So that's basically what docking does. It basically says, hey, keep my asset here connected to one of these corners of whatever container or grid is inside. And I can dock it to the top, the left, I can dock it to the right, I can dock it to the bottom. I can do all four corners, or I can just pick one. It all depends on what we'll be talking about later, how you want your site to respond. But we're not going to get into that nerdiness just yet. Okay, so I'm going to leave this docked. I'm going to do 5%. And for those of you who are wondering why there's text on this image asset, don't worry about that. If you join some of our advanced courses or advanced live streams, you'll learn how to actually make that text real. We're going to do all of the content on the left as real text, but this is actually a really complicated and not a beginner thing that we want to do on this live stream. So we will worry about that another time. Come tomorrow. Okay, so up next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on my left grid cell. I'm going to go to quick add. I'm going to go to title, and I am going to type in our content here. So I'm going to just steal this. I'm going to paste, double click, paste. And I'm just going to grab everything I can. So I'm going to go back to add elements here. I'm going to go back to my masterclass library. I'm going to pull out our logo here, just drag it out. I'm going to go and grab I'm actually going to grab one more button. I'm going to add this button that we have, this login button. I'm going to add this asset. Save as asset. We'll call this the login button, and I'm going to add this to our masterclass library so I can actually use that. But to show you guys how to make that as well from scratch is I'm just going to go to add element. I'm going to go to button, and they have a whole bunch of preset buttons for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull out this styled button here. And now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go to my design tab here. I'm going to reduce the background black to 0. I'm going to select text. I'm going to select the text color here. And again, just as a reminder, if you're trying to edit anything, when it comes to the color, the size, anything in Editor X, it's docking, what grid it's in, it's always going to be in the inspector. If you're trying to edit an element, always go into your inspector, this toolbar right here. So we're gonna go into our text right here. We're gonna find text color. We're gonna make it black. We still have our icon, it's still white, so we're gonna scroll down, we're gonna go to icon. And here we can see the size, we can change the size of the icon, the color of the icon, and the rotation of the icon. I care about the color right now, so I'm gonna change this to black. Now, we don't want send and we don't want the paper airplane. So we're gonna go and select this button right here, change text and icon. I want it to say login, just like that. And I'm gonna change my icon here. What I'm gonna do is I can either grab media from Wix, I can go here and type in light bulb. Let's see if we can just do light. All right, if you can't find an asset that you actually like, just go ahead and upload it. And because, let's see, I'm just gonna upload it right now, upload media, and I am going to grab, technical masterclass, and I'm gonna grab our light bulb, just like this, our SVG. It's uploading, boom. All right, I'm gonna choose that. Okay, perfect. So I've changed the text and we've changed our icon here. And so we now very simply have a button. All right, next what we are going to do is we're gonna grab two more assets. We're gonna grab our squiggles. I'm just gonna drag them in, and then once all of our assets are in, basically now we can start to put everything in container. We can start getting, I like to start tweaking things after I have all my assets in. It makes a lot more sense. All right, so let's go ahead. We're gonna go to add element. We're gonna go back to our assets right here. We're gonna go to our asset library, master class, and we are going to drag out our squiggle one. Just place that here, go back again, and we're gonna drag out our squiggle two. We're gonna get a second button. Now I could just drag out my button here, honestly, but I'm just gonna show you guys how I do this from scratch. So I'm just gonna grab this start now. Actually, I'm gonna duplicate this. I'm gonna Control D if you are on a desktop and Command D if you're on a Mac. So I'm gonna duplicate this. I'm just gonna change the button. Again, I want to set the opacity of this to 100. Our text, we're gonna switch to the color to white. Close that. We're gonna go ahead and grab our icon. We're gonna switch this to white as well. We're gonna close that, and then we do not want rounded corners, so I'm gonna go to corners, set the radius to 0, and all right. Now what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna change the text here again. I'm gonna have this say start now, and our icon is gonna change. We're gonna switch this to an arrow. So this time I'm gonna type in arrow, and I think I accidentally am searching my site files. It's not gonna, oh, okay, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and see all, and we're just gonna grab a really simple arrow. Let's go ahead and let's do this right arrow right here. Perfect. Now I don't want the arrow on the left, so what we're gonna go ahead and do is, again, if I wanna edit something, we are going to look at our inspector and our design tab. If we're trying to manipulate the layout or the color, things like that. So I'm gonna go to layout here. And what we have here is text and icon position. Right now we have the icon first and the text second. We don't want that. We want to actually switch it. So we're selecting this right here. And if I'm going a little too fast, let me know in the chat. If you guys are feeling at a good pace, let me know. And now all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna I'm gonna scale the button to kind of something that I feel like I'm okay with. And let's actually see what this get started. I'm going to change this again. Get started. There we go. And one thing, I kind of want to make the space between the icon and the button just a little bit more. I'm going to scale the arrow just a tiny bit. And I want to increase the spacing between the icon and the arrow. So I'm going to go ahead and use this as well. Again, I did that under layout in the inspector panel of the button. Okay, so we're good with our button. What else do we need to add? We need our paragraph. Let's go ahead and do that. Right click, quick add paragraph, or I can go to add elements and go to quick add and just pull out a paragraph just like this. Okay, I'll organize it in a second, but let's actually get the content. I'm going to copy it from here. Let me go ahead and close this. I'm just going to double click and paste. Okay. I'm going to scale this to about 3 lines, just like this. And now I'm going to start getting some of this stuff in order. So we have my button, I have my text, I have my title, I have my squiggles, but now everything is kind of ugly. We have not designed anything. So let's get into that. Okay, first things first, let's actually get our fonts. So I'm going to edit our text here. And I don't want Poppins, I want Product Sans. Now, if you guys don't have Product Sans in Editor X, what I love about this is if you have fonts that you love on your desktop, you can very easily upload fonts right here, and you just upload them. So very easy. If you've got them on your desktop, that's what you like designing with, you can bring them onto Editor X as well. I'm gonna scale this to be 90 pixels, and let's see, I think I actually want to do Product Sans bold. There we go. Okay. And by the way, for those of you who may or may not be wondering, I have basically, this is not 1 line of text. This is literally 3 lines of text. For those of you who are maybe typing this in, right, you guys might have a little something like this. And you can squeeze it down like this, right? But as we go through this, you might fall into some issues that we're not going to end up falling into. And to avoid that, what I've done here is actually just, because I don't want to have to deal with that responsive, I just know that I want 3 lines always on desktop, tablet, and mobile. So I am just going to, let's pull this out again. I want people who on 1 line, care about on another line, and your growth on another line. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to width. Now, as we learn, you guys will understand basically what this is saying, this width and this percentage is, this container is taking up 88% of the width of our grid cell on the left. For example, if I do 100, let me just show you what this does. It's taking up the full width of this grid cell here. Now, I don't want to have to do that math. It gets really sticky, and I'll explain why a little bit more later. But what I want this to do is the container that this text is within, I just want it to fit the text confines. So I'm going to click this percentage right here and where we get other options. And I'm just going to do max content. Now, that entire text box is the exact width it should be for the container, what's inside of it. So we'll be using max content a lot today. Max content basically, whether you're using it horizontally or vertically, it basically says, hey, Editor X, take a look at what is within this container or this box, and please just condense the size of the container, etc., to the actual size of the elements within it. And it just keeps things really organized, and you really don't have to do any math, and it really helps with responsivity. Okay, so let's start to get this stuff organized. I'm going to start pulling these things where I want them. I do want to change the fonts of this. We're going to go ahead and do Product Sans like we did before. Product. There we go. And I don't really necessarily like the line height. So I'm going to go to line spacing here. And usually it is on auto spacing. But I usually turn that off. And I'm just going to set this to 1 right now. Or 1.2. There we go. Okay. Again, just moving things around. I can also hold shift and move multiple things at once. Just moving things into place. Let's scale this. Thanks, says Team Montserrat. I also am with you, my friend. Team Montserrat all the way. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I want a nice little, we're going to make a little box here in a second, or a nice little container for all our assets in this left sort of hemisphere. Okay. So at first, I'm going to just select everything. I'm going to select these two. This here, I'm holding shift. I'm selecting this vector art, and our content here. I'm actually going to move this in. And another thing that I like about Editor X is that there's alignment tools. If you guys see this, I get to see, I'm trying to make sure everything is nice and aligned here. I can also use my alignment tools. I can either align them things to the left, to the center, to the right, and basically anything else. But I'm trying to make sure that everything is evenly spaced. And we have a nice little hard line there design-wise. So now I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to put everything from that's really here in a container. So I have everything selected, and as you guys can see, place in container. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And so now I basically have a group. You can think of this as a group. Now what we're going to do here is, that's great. We have a group. We have our image on the right. We're halfway there, but now we need to start making the boxes we were talking about. Remember? We need to tell Editor X when we start to shrink the the website how things should be structured. So we need to create more grids now. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to select my container now, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Apply Grid. And how I want to do this is I want to have almost every row of this have its own, or every row of content, I want it to have its own row. So we're going to have a row for our logo and our login, a row for our, basically this squiggle and this text here, and this squiggle. This might be one whole section here. And we're going to have another one for our get started. So clicking container, apply grid, and we're going to start off with a 1x3, just like this. And first things first, I am going to, and things might get tricky, so please let me know if you guys need me to pause. What I want to do here is, you guys can see our first grid and the different grid cells. We have one whole section here, and actually let me just go in here so you guys can see this. I'm going to go to advanced so it's a little bit more clear. We have 1 row, 2 rows, and 3 rows. What we're going to do is we're going to get all of this stuff, our logo and our login. We're going to group this. We're going to place it in a container. We're going to go over into our inspector, layout, and we want this in the first grid cell. Perfect. This other stuff, this title, this vector art, and this other vector art, I want to place it in a container as a group. I want to place it in the second container here, or that second row, just like this, using my inspector and just placing that grid, or placing that container inside of that. And before I continue, I'm going to do this really quick. Things are starting to look ugly, guys, but I'll show you how and why it's really doing that. So to get us a little bit more space, I'm going to click on our main container that we made 3 rows on, change grid layout. And this is where we're going to start using max content. I don't need all this space, right? Because we're just hosting the logo and the login. So I'm going to double click or click in here. Right now it has a minimum pixels. I can edit this if I wanted to. I can, again, use percentages. I can use auto, which basically, again, it looks for the actual height of the content within the actual grid. Don't want to do that. I'm not trying to deal with the math. I'm just going to set it to max content. And exactly as I said, it's basically shrunk to the exact height of the content within it, or the container within that grid cell. All right, up next, we're going to kind of do the same thing with this container here. Again, I'm going to make sure that everything is. So we have this container. I want to make sure, I'm going to use my alignment tools really quick. Make sure that this is in the 3rd row and that it is aligned to the top. There we go. It's nice and snug. I'm gonna go back into I'm gonna call our containers things because I think it's gonna be really confusing. I'm gonna call this our main container. That's the first one that we made, where basically everything is inside. That's our main container. We're gonna call this row 2. We're gonna call this row 1, which holds our logo and our button or our login. Row 2, this is our title. And now we're gonna do the same thing to our row 3. So I'm gonna select these things, holding shift, place in container. I'm gonna go back to our main container where everything is placed, change grid layout, do max content for the row height, just to squeeze everything. And we're gonna add margin and things like that, margin and padding, so that we actually create space. Okay, so to do that, first thing, we're gonna go into and I'm gonna name this container here as well. So we have this container here, we're gonna call this row 3. I'm gonna call this row 1. And I'm also gonna just move them in our layers here. Now, layers work the exact same as if you're in any other design platform. The ones that are on top show first. Isaac, what's going on? I see that 100% in the live chat. What are you thinking? All right. So some of these things I'm gonna just scale. I don't want that squiggle to be too large. I'm gonna move this over just a little bit. Okay. Now I'm gonna start adding some spacing just so we can breathe a little bit. So I'm gonna select our second row container. I'm gonna go to my inspector and I am going to scroll all the way down to margins. And I'm gonna set 50 pixels, just like that. I'm gonna do that to the top. I'm gonna go and select row 1. I'm going to go to the inspector in the margins, type in 50 pixels. There we go. So we have some nice spacing, just like that. Now, what we need to do, because when we start getting into this responsive stuff, guys, and this is when we can now intro what is this stuff in the center. Right here, this is what page we're on. We're on the home page. And obviously, we can see that we are on desktop. Mobile, this is where we need to work on. Things are not automatic. Once we start giving things percentage behaviors and telling things how to actually morph, this part is going to be really easy. The desktop is probably the most tricky piece, setting everything up. But once we have our percentages and we've changed basically whether everything from horizontal to vertical, which really is just a click of a button, everything will look much better. But things are not automatic when we just press these buttons. So let's go to our desktop. Now what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna do two things. We're gonna start getting into percentages, okay? Left side of our screen here, we have a width of 63%. So 63, this whole container is 63% of this whole grid cell. Over here, this image is 57% of the right-hand side grid cell. And so when we start squeezing this, okay, I'm gonna grab this resize thing, and this is where we start to resize, and this is where we get to start to see what happens when we resize things, okay? Now remember, this is the finished site. This is how things resize. Very clean. Okay, so let's get there. Okay, so first I want to click on my text. The text pieces are really important. I'm going to select scale text, and now you get basically two input boxes. The furthest input box is basically how big do you want the text to be at the largest it can get. We're gonna hit 90 pixels. The smallest it can be is 10. Now I don't want that. I'm probably gonna do about like 50 for now, so that when we actually start scaling this, as you can see, the text starts to get a little bit smaller. We're gonna do that to everything. We're gonna make everything resize nicely. Edit text, scale text. We're gonna set this to 20 or maybe 18 pixels max, 10 pixels smallest. I'm going to start docking this content inside of its container. So people who care about your growth, I just want it to dock to the left. I don't care if it's, I don't want it to be docked to the bottom. I want our vector art to be docked to the right in the bottom. Our squiggle, I want to be docked to the top here. Rune says, hey, what's going on, Brandon? Great video, learning a lot about the clustered container layer approach. Been struggling a lot with different breakpoints. Yes, Rune, well, I'm glad you're here because literally that's what we're trying to do with the masterclass. Like the responsive portion is typically very difficult and you master it through understanding grids, grid cells, and percentage responsiveness and text scaling. So hopefully you'll be able to understand really how this is done just for the how we diagnose this. The first part of responsivity, guys, in Rune is to test this resize. What is happening? What do and do we not like about how this is responding? And we change it using the inspector panel. So I'm gonna squeeze this here. Let's see what we're noticing and what I don't like. So first off, I don't like how far this squiggle is going apart from this text. This text here is getting, pulled down, or this squiggle is getting pulled down to the corner. I don't like that. And the reason that is because it's docked to the bottom. And these are pushing into one another because we don't have basically a grid or something telling them, hey, don't push into one another. So let's go ahead and make those rules for our site. So as you guys remember, we made a container for our button in our paragraph here, but we did not create a grid. So I'm going to create a grid here so we can separate the content within it. I'm going to go to my I'm going to click on my Get Started button, open up the inspector, and I can see that it is in the left-hand side grid cell. Perfect, that's what I want. But this paragraph here, I can see that it's in both grid cells. I don't want that. That means that they're gonna push into each other. So I'm going to select right side, and as you can see, it goes right into that grid here. And we're gonna change the percentages here. It's saying 58%. For right now, I'm gonna set this to 90. So it takes up 90% of that whole grid that we created, or that grid cell. I'm going to come back over here, get started. I want this to be aligned to the top. And you know what? We'll make this a little bit bigger. Maybe we'll do I guess this is fine for now. I think what I do want to do over here is maybe make this a little bit smaller, make this 16 pixels. There we go. I want kind of like the height of the paragraph to be the same size as our Get Started button. All right, so I'm going to select this container here. This whole container is about 90 pixels, or 90%. 90% of what? It is 90% of the main container's width. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is actually really huge, and I apologize I haven't said this earlier. This blue that you're seeing here, these are breadcrumbs. This is basically a quick access to our layers. So if we go to layers, we get to see the hierarchy of our site. We get to go into main container. We get to see that we have our row 1, row 2, row 3. And as I click them, they get highlighted in our canvas as well. But also, if I click on this container, right, I get to see that this container is within another container that is within a section. So those are kind of breadcrumbs, and it shows you the hierarchy of things as well. So let's go ahead and fix this. So we have some space here. I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to use max content so that our left grid cell is the exact same size as our button. So I'm going to select our container here, our third row container, change grid layout, advanced mode. And I want to, instead of F1 here, I'm going to click it, click the FR, and do maximum content here. And as you guys can see, let me go back so you guys can see this. That whole width just pulls exactly to the size of that button. And I'm going to actually do the exact same thing here with the height. I'm going to click this. Instead of a minimum pixel size, I'm going to go to min-max, max content. So that container that is within, or the button and paragraph container stays the same height, and the same width of our button. All right. Now let's test. Let's see. Let's take a look at this. Now, first off, you can see that our button and our text are not pushing into one another. That's perfect. Now, do I like how it's kind of morphing like this? No, but we can change that. Facebook user is asking, where is this broadcast from? YouTube. This is being broadcast on Facebook, but if you would like to watch on YouTube, it is also on YouTube. I don't believe I left the link for you guys on Facebook. But if you go to Brandon Groce, you type that in, we're live right now on YouTube. I'll leave you guys the YouTube link just in case next time if you guys want to pop on over. All right, so let's see what we can do. What we could do is we can just make this button a little bit smaller. We'll just scale this down just a little bit like that. There we go. I actually like that. That looks nice. And so we'll worry about the tablet when we get there. But one thing at a time. So let's go here. Let's continue fixing some of this stuff. Let's go to our vector. I didn't like how it was docked to the bottom and it was going basically to the bottom right corner. Let's go ahead and fix that. So I undocked it from the bottom and let's see. Okay, it's still going to the bottom. And some of this stuff is just a little bit of troubleshooting, guys, but it's understanding how responsiveness works and being able to just, okay, push and pull and be like, oh, I don't like what that happened. What just happened there? Let me go and fix that particular behavior that's happening. And you do that with percentages, and you do that with your inspector panel, and it's a big back and forth. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make, because our text is not scaling, our title is not scaling as much as I would like. So I'm going to set this to 40, maybe even 30. Let's see. And a big thing here too to remember is that the biggest scale, or actually let me just do this first before I even get to that. Let's just see. Okay, so that scales nicely, but now we're getting some separation between this stuff here, and I don't want that either. So what I believe I'm going to do is I'm going to set a very specific height to this container so that things don't get spread out. So I am going to do a max height of a certain amount of pixels, which is 409. Well, let's just do 500. We'll do 500 pixels. And let's see. Nope, that's not gonna help us. I think the easiest thing, because on what I did, I tried to do this a little bit different. I actually made 4 rows rather than 3, but I thought maybe I'll be able to do this with a little bit easier with 3 rows. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do here is click on this container. I'm actually gonna remove this. And I'm gonna go back to my container, our main container, change grid layout, and instead of 3 rows, I'm gonna add a 4th one. Reason being, it will be a lot easier to contain this squiggly if it's in its own row. So I'm gonna leave that there. Change grid layout here. Max content. There seems to be some space here. I think we did that 50 pixels. We're gonna reduce this. We're gonna just do 25. There we go. I'm gonna pull this out like this. I'm gonna make sure that this squiggle is in the second row. I am gonna give it some negative margin so that it goes a little bit into the next row. Let's do -10. And I'm just gonna use my arrow keys, just continuing to push this down, using the negative margin right here in the inspector. So there we go. So we're still in row 2, but we're using negative margin to pull that squiggle down into this 3rd row here. And what I'm gonna do, go back to my main container, change grid layout. I'm gonna set this to, let's see if we do max content here. There we go, max content. I'm going to also set this to a container in max content. Or you know what? This might not even need a container. What I'm going to do here is, might be a little bit easier. I'm going to take off the margin. I'm going to align this to the bottom here. Also going to align this to the left or the right. I'm also going to add some negative margin here to the bottom here. So I'm going to do -10. Because what I'm trying to do is this baseline, I'm going to try to align it to where this squiggle is. Okay, just using my arrow keys, just trying to get this pixel. There we go. One more. There we go. And so I'm just going to add padding or margin to the top of this. I'm going to set 25 pixels. That container, maybe we'll do 50. Perfect. All right, let's check our responsiveness one more time. There we go. We're getting there, guys. Now what we could do is we could, just like we've done here with our container, we can split this up into, we could add these into containers and basically say, hey, don't touch each other. So let's actually go ahead and do that. Holding Shift, selecting both, placing container. And I am going to apply grid 2x1. I'm going to select my vector art over here, make sure it's in grid, the right grid. I'm going to select my text on the left, make sure it's on the left side. All right, my vector art, I want to scale this up. Put it to the bottom. Make sure that this entire container that I made is in the third row only. I am gonna have to, all right, let's see what this does for us. All right, so our big squiggle is looking fine, but, oh, that, okay, that, all right, there we go. So this last row, we have not done max, we've done max content, but if you guys see this, there's like extra space here that should not be there. Why that happens is sometimes there's this min height that sometimes it's added by Editor X, and sometimes it's really smart, but sometimes you have to know that when you see height that's added, it's like, oh, my inspector is telling it, the inspector is overriding the settings of my container. So I actually need to go into this, set this to none. There we go. All right, scaling. And for some reason, this is still increasing in size. Why? Let's click, let's go to our inspector. Minimum height, we're gonna set this to none. Okay. Just doing some, just seeing what's going on. All right, this container here, rather than 90, I want to set this to 100. So it takes that full space of our main container. Now this, let's go in here and go to advanced mode. And it's the pixel width. So it's saying just stay almost 300 pixels. We don't want that, we want max content. There we go, hit done. Advanced mode, this says max content, but there's space up top, and I believe that is our 50 pixels. So I'm going to set this to 0. Okay. We're looking good. The only thing is this. This is what's making our that entire section like huge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set some percentages here and also change the line height of this. But basically, in essence, guys, like the responsive side of this is like tweaking. Building the desktop just as is fine. But as soon as you start getting the responsive, you need to start, like I've already done this. I literally did it an hour prior to the live stream. But actually building it again and also trying to change some of the things to make it a little bit more streamlined. There's still, because I'm making it a little bit different, I have to, there's no like science to it. I have to see what it does as I smash it, or basically resize it, and I have to go about changing the settings to get what I want. All right, so this stuff is running into each other. What I'm gonna do, margin, we're gonna do 5% instead of margin this time. Maybe 10. Okay. Let's start to squeeze. All right, that's looking really good. All right. Now, what I don't want is these are getting really close. And now let's say one thing that I could do. Let's say that, you know, I want my page to basically at a certain width switch from desktop to tablet. The way I could do that is I could go to tablet, go in, well actually go to here, this breakpoint, these 3 dots. And I could actually edit when this entire website goes to tablet. I would just click in here and I could increase the pixels to maybe, let's say, I really like how everything looks right about here, right? And we can still change this. We're gonna change this. But let's say, you know, I want everything to switch over to tablet at 1,133 pixels. I would just go to our breakpoints and I would type that right here so that next time as the viewport gets to 1,133 pixels, it will switch from the desktop view to the tablet view. All right. So let's go ahead, desktop. We're gonna set this to, maybe we'll do this to 60. No, I think this is fine. All right, 5%, and I am also going to pull this to align this right to the right side of the grid cell, the left grid cell, and I want 5 pixels of margin from the right, just like we do with our image here. Okay, let's start to resize. I don't like how this is squeezing, so let's do, there should be, here we go, scale proportionally. So I'm gonna right click that or check that. There we go. So now we have that nice proportionate scaling. Now what I am gonna do, so now we're in tablet, okay? So I'm gonna click this, and all I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna select our section, change grid layout, and instead of horizontal, we're gonna do vertical. And all I need to do is just center my main container, and I'm gonna center our image. I can increase this, the percentages of the actual width of this. I'm gonna set it to about 90. Now the section is a little small. Instead of 100 VH, what we're gonna set this to is auto. And what that does now is basically Editor X looks at everything inside of the section and says, oh, well you have all this content in there, well I need to actually get bigger or smaller based on, it fits the content that's within it. So we have our image, we're gonna give it a little bit of margin here, we're gonna do 10%. And if we wanted to do pixels, 75, but I'm gonna keep it at percentages here. Our main section here is looking good. We're gonna add margin to the bottom, or excuse me, to the top. So we're gonna do about 10%. There we go. We're gonna size our squiggle here. We're actually gonna set it to a pixel width. And we're just gonna scale it to the size that we want. We'll do 60. And we're gonna edit text here. We actually want this to be a little bit bigger, so maybe we'll set this to 50. And this is what I was trying to say earlier. So the most right button or the most right text size is how big your text will scale at its the largest it will be. This text right here that I'm highlighting is what your text will be at its smallest, or really right now. So if I set this to 100, first of all, it's going to move to 100 that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a font of 100 pixels, guys. But I don't want that. We're going to do 50. There we go. We're going to scale this up, edit text. We don't want 10 pixels. We're going to do 16. All right. And maybe what we want to do is set this to about 80% in terms of our width. And we're looking pretty good. So this is tablet. Now let's go to mobile. This is going to be pretty easy. All I'm going to do again is our container here. It's kind of going outside. One of the quick tips of how to fix this, because a lot of people have this issue as well, is try to figure out what is outside of the border, like the bounding box. So what I want us to take a look at is, or really just solve, is, okay, this container is going outside. We have this container that's kind of going outside. We have this squiggle, and we also have our first row going outside as well. How do we fix this? So first off, we're going to select our main container. If we go to my layer, you guys can see which one I'm selecting. It's centered, but I also want to set this to 90%. Okay. First thing, I'm going to select my text here. I'm going to scale it. Instead of 40, we're going to set it to 30. There we go. We have some space. I am going to remove that negative margin that we have here. We're going to set this to 0. We're going to increase the size of this just a little bit. Maybe we'll do 35. We're going to reduce the negative margin on here. We're going to do negative 20, just to give us some more space between this text and this as well. And let's go to our container here. I think there's a lot of margin here. We have 10% margin. We're going to reduce to about 2%. And let's double check and see what this space is. So I'm selecting my main container, grid layout, advanced. And so we have, again, this has changed back to pixels rather than max content. So we're going to go back in here. Again, guys, it's all about just figuring out, like, again, it's not science. It's like, okay, well, this didn't work. Why isn't this working? Oh, well, there's extra space here. It must be because my rows did something. So max content. And some things don't, as Editor X is just like most of its competitors, some styles do cascade from desktop all the way down. But there are some things, for example, like these rows, that sometimes don't apply. So you just have to make sure and do your due diligence. We don't want to have this horizontal anymore. We want it vertical. Very simple. Change grid layout. Boom. And all we're going to do now is, let's go back to advanced. Just like we changed this. Remember, on the previous breakpoints, we set this to max content. Because we've changed it, now we have to edit these again. From min to max, we're going to go max content so that height hugs our button. Min max, change to max content so that height hugs our paragraph. I'm going to align our text to the left. Now, the button, we don't want on top of the text. We want the text on top of the button. So we're just going to do a quick switcheroo here. I'm going to select my text. I'm going to move it to our top grid cell. I'm going to select my button. Going to my layers. Selecting the button and put it into the grid cell down below. Now I'm just going to add some margin here. I'm going to select my container with our title. I'm going to add some margin to the bottom here. I'm going to add, let's do 5%. There we go. I'm going to add some margin on a paragraph. We're going to do 5% here. I'm going to add a little bit more. So I'm going to, maybe we'll do 10%. 10%, 10%, there we go. Perfect. So guys, we're looking pretty good. So like I said, the desktop is probably the hardest piece. We've done our tablet, we're looking good. We've done our desktop, but it's all about setting things up on the desktop. Once you have the desktop done, like we literally did the final responsive portions in the last 10 minutes. So last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change our footer color to that nice beige that we have. and I'm going to do one last check because I can go through all these, right? And it looks fine. I'm sure a lot of you guys who just started using Editor X, you're like, well, you know, Brandon, the desktop looks good. You know, the tablet looks good. The mobile looks good. But the last thing you need to check is this drag. You want to see that and make sure that everything is responding the way that you want to. Okay, so this looks good. I'm going to keep scaling. Boom, this looks good. I like what I'm looking at in terms of the tablet. And I'm going to scale this all the way to the desktop. And it looks good. Now, here, like, just like this, okay? So I'm not really liking how this is looking, especially how this is like stacking like this. So the last change I'm going to make is I really like how this looks for desktop at 1450. So I'm going to set this to 1450. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the point where I don't like it. Right there. So right about here. So 1,000, almost 1,120. So I'm going to go to my three dots here, and instead of 1,000, I'm going to do 1,120. Okay. And what this does, is as I scale down, at 1,120, it goes immediately to tablet. And here we go. Now what I can do here, I can continue refining. For example, I don't like how this is at the top here. Maybe what I do is I set, instead of 90%, I set this to 60. And I left align this here. I'm going to give it a margin on the left, maybe 5%. Edit the text, maybe make this a little bit bigger, set this to 20 so it can scale a little bit better. Maybe set this to 70. There we go. And again, last test. It's looking good. Boom. It's going to switch to tablet. This is looking much better. I like what I'm seeing. And all the way down to mobile. All right, guys, so that's pretty much it. If I really wanted to, I could set this get started button to 100% of this width. Boom. But guys, this is the end-to-end. I hope you guys learned a lot. And now if you guys wanted to, for example, like these things are a little too big, you can always go into, again, your design. You can go to your icon, change the size of your icon, change the layout, make your button align a little bit better to, you know, the side. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's take time to polish this baby just a little bit more. All right. So we're looking good. All I have to do now is just go to publish. I'm going to do Masterclass Live 001. Save and continue. It should publish in a second. Boom, view site. All right. Now to add the animation. Okay. Now the only reason that this image popped in blurry, guys, is because I didn't actually go through and make a sizable image or a properly sized image for the website. Now, if you actually go and create an asset that is properly the type of images that you use for a website that are actually, I'm forgetting the word, guys, but is the proper size that doesn't take a long time to load, it won't do that. It will not blur. So, and it even still takes a second to actually load. So this is the site, guys. It took an hour. We have a full responsive site. We have a button that we can actually, oh, we need to actually change the hover interaction. We'll do that in a second. We can actually send this button to go somewhere. So let's tie all this up and let's explain how we can send our button to take us places too. But while I am doing this, these final touches, are there any questions in the chat? I know we did a lot today. And again, if you guys want to go ahead and try this on your own, in the link in the description, we have our Discord. If you guys have additional questions you guys want to ask us in our community. You also have the asset library where you guys can actually try this on your own, rewatch this again on your own time, and actually try to reproduce this in Editor X and ask questions in our Discord as to, you know, really just show off what you did, or maybe change it a little bit, or maybe just you have some questions on, you know, why maybe something didn't work. But let us go ahead and I just forgot what we were about to change. Oh, the hover. Okay, so I'm going to click my button. I'm going to go to inspector, and we have button state. We have regular, we have hover. I'm just going to turn the opacity off on that. I'm going to go to border. I'm going to set all this to 0. I'm going to make sure that is the same on every breakpoint. There we go. It's cascaded, so I only have to do it once. And now if I do want this button to go somewhere, I just go to link, and I have a couple options. I can set it to none. I can actually make it go to a different page on the website. And I can do that very simply by going to pages here, adding a page. We're just going to call it login. We're going to go back to our home page. We're going to click our button, link. We go to page, and we also, there's other options as well, web address, anchor, yada, yada, yada. So I'm going to click page, I'm going to go to login. I'm going to hit done. And there you go. You have your linked button. Now I think there was one more thing, but maybe it'll come back to me. So I'm going to publish it. I'm going to make sure we get all our changes in there. I'm going to view site. I'm going to close out our old one. Okay. And actually, let me refresh this again. So we have this nice little animation. Some of you guys are probably like, well, why did it animate? I'll show you how to do that and how simple it is. And that's the last thing. This is the last step. So I'm going to click on this image, and right here you'll see this little animated, this little moving diamond. You click that, and there's a whole bunch of already produced animations for you guys that you can edit. The duration, the timing, the speed, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole bunch to choose from. Maybe we'll try reveal this time because I kind of like that. So when I'm gonna go back. I clicked customize, and the delay I'm gonna set to, I don't want it to start till 0.4 seconds. Okay, and I can always set it to animate once, but we're not gonna worry about that right now. I'm gonna go over to my container. I'm gonna click it, our main container. I'm gonna select animate, and I'm gonna do float in. Go to customize. The direction, I want it to come from the left instead of the right. I'm gonna play it, and there we go. So I'm gonna publish one last time. View site, and there we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is really it. I'm gonna turn off my camera really quick so you guys can actually see this animation in style. Okay, just give me a second. Refreshing. Beautiful. Scale this puppy. Okay, let's take a look. We have our button, we can click it, and it goes to that blank page that we made. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so with that said, let me go ahead and turn my camera back on. If I can find it. I literally forgot where my camera was, guys. All right, there we go. So ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. If you guys want to, first off, like this video if you enjoyed it, that would help tremendously. But we would really love to know, both in the chat, how you guys felt about this. Would you like to have more of these? Because we're going to be having one of these at least every week, or excuse me, every month at the beginning of each week, so we can really just have people who are interested in Editor X really come to one place and understand the fundamentals, the functionality of Editor X, really what you need to pay attention to, and really just how to make your first basic site in Editor X and feel confident from, just being able to operate in Editor X from this one masterclass. And obviously, more important than that, being able to also jump into our community, be with hundreds of other people on the no-code journey, ask questions, not only help yourself out, but others as you advance in your understanding of Editor X and no-code. So really quick, before we close out, I do want to show you guys the Discord that is in the link in the description if you guys want to join. But a quick little showcase of what is in store for you. So this is our Discord. Again, link in the description. We have, obviously, I'm just going to show you really what matters. We have tons of designers chatting with one another, but what you guys are probably going to want as you're learning Editor X is we have an Ask a Question section. Really, this chat section is what you guys will be using. And if you guys find bugs, you guys can write them in here. But the Editor X team, along with myself and many other community leaders, are in here helping you guys with your challenges. And if you guys ask a question in Ask a Question, it literally creates an automatic thread in which that pings me and many other Editor X mentors and community leaders to really just answer your question. As you guys can see, there's like hundreds of questions that we have literally answered. So please share with us what you're doing, your challenges, and we'll come and help you. And that's really it. So other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hanging out. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow in our intermediate advanced class on Editor X to make something really cool. And other than that, I'll see you in the Discord. And do not forget, this month is the first time we are actually going to be doing what we call Chill and Chat, where you guys in Discord can just come on a Wednesday for an hour, hang out with me and many other Editor X people, get to meet each other. We're going to be doing a voice chat and video chat to hang out and just kind of do like an online meet and greet. So with that, I'll see you guys then, and I hope you have an amazing day. Peace.
First, but when you heat, I'll be there to love my dear. Drive